So after I transferred the information from the pattern to the fabric, I can take my pins out. Okay. And this is the pocket bag pattern piece, so I will open my pattern pieces as mirror imaged pieces. Okay, so this will be the right side of the fabric, and this one, this is the wrong side of the fabric. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going also to unpin my front piece. Okay, all right, so this is my front piece and this is the right side of the fabric. So what I need to do is to pin right side to right side. These two pieces are exactly the same. I need to pin the right side of my garment to the right side of the pocket bag pattern piece or fabric piece. Okay, align your seam allowances together and pin, matching your notches. All right, and I'll put a pin in the middle, and I will do the same thing with the back piece. So I will pin it. I have my notches already cut. All right, and then I'll remove my pattern piece. And then here is the right side of the pocket to the right side of my bag, matching the seam allowances and the seams and matching my notches. So I'll pin edge to edge and notch to notch on each side of the seam. All right. And I will match the edges in the middle and put a third pin. And now I have the front and the back with the pocket bags attached to each one of them with pins. I need to take this and attach them by machine. So I will sew at 1/2 inch on each side. I will use the 1/2 inch seam guide on my machine, and what I'm going to do is I am going to attach the front pocket bag to the front skirt piece and the back pocket bag to the back skirt piece. I am aligning my notch with the needle. I will put my needle down. Right, this is a permanent stitch, so you will back stitch beginning and end. And my edge is touching the 1/2 inch seam guide on the needle plate. So I took few stitches and then I'll back stitch. Right, and I'll keep my edge aligning with the 1/2 inch seam guide until I get to the other end of the seam. And when I get to the end of the seam, I will back stitch again. So this is the first step, and I can do the same step for the back side too. So I'll bring it over here, and then I will align my notch with the needle and my edge with the 1/2 inch seam guide, and I'll take few stitches, back stitch, remove my pin, and I will continue stitching until I get to the other end, removing my pins as I go. Once I'm done, I back stitched, I raised my needle, and then I raise the foot, and I will trim my thread in preparation for the next step. The next step, we will understitch those seams. What is understitching? It's stitching the seam allowance to in this case it's gonna be I will be stitching the seam allowance to the pocket, okay, and that will help keep the pocket inside the garment. So how do I do that? I opened the seam allowance, both layers are going towards the pocket, and I will stitch a 1/16 of an inch away from the my first seam. Okay, how do I do that? I am aligning the seam with the inner edge of the left toe of my machine, and I am using stitch length number 2. I can back stitch a couple of stitches, and then all I'm doing is I am pulling my pattern pieces or my fabric pieces away from each other and aligning the seam that I just sewed to the inner edge of my toe, so that I am stitching at a 1/16 of an inch distance from that particular seam. Once I get to the end, I can just go ahead and back stitch. Okay, so I understitched this the back. I will do the same for the front. So again, here is my seam, and in this case my seam is to the right side, so I will align the right side of the seam with the inner edge of the toe, and again I will stitch a couple of stitches, back stitch, and then I'll continue until I get to the end of the seam. And as you can see, I am pulling the fabric pieces away from each other. That also will help my seam to stay inside the garment. Okay, I'm done. So I am trimming the thread on both pieces. Okay. Next, I will put one of the two pieces that are attached to each other on top of the two pieces that are attached to each other. So right now I have the front with it attached to its pocket bag, and the back attached to its pocket bag. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put them on top of each other, matching the seams and pinning. So this is the side seam of the skirt, alright, and I'll do the same thing over here. So I'm matching and pinning, okay, and I need to do the same thing over here. And as you can see, the seam allowance is going towards the pocket, and that's what I want. Okay, I am matching also the edges of the pocket, and I am holding them together using pins. The same thing will happen in here. So I'm holding my pattern pieces with pins all around. And the stitching that we did kept the seam allowance towards the pocket on both sides of the garment. Okay. I'm aligning my seam allowance and pinning, and one more. Okay, so what I'm going to proceed to do is I'm going to start here using my seam guide on the needle plate. I'll stay at half an inch away from the edge, and then when I come here I will back stitch, and then I will cross to finish this seam, and then I will come over here, so at half an inch until I get here, and then I'll pass until I get to half an inch, and then pivot to go down. So let's do this. So again, I am starting at half an inch away from the seam. I'm aligning my edge with the half an inch line. I will take few stitches, back stitch, and then I remove my pin until I get half an inch down from the junction, so from the corner. Okay, with my needle down, I pivot, and I need one, actually I need to back stitch one. Take one stitch, two stitches, and try again. Now I am at half an inch. Okay. To reinforce this corner, I need to back stitch a couple of stitches, because this is kind of a tension point. So to reinforce it, I did back stitching for 2 stitches, and then I'm forward stitching again with my needle down. I am at half an inch away from the seam guide. I'll take stitches until I come to this point, also half an inch away. So I am staying at half an inch away from the edge using my seam guide. And when I got here, what I'm doing right now, I am moving the excess fabric so that I can straighten this edge as much as I can, so that I stay at half an inch away from the edge. I'm manipulating my fabric this way. And using the seam guide to stay at half an inch away from the edge. Once I get to this point, I will back stitch. Okay, so this is this kind of closed the side seam of the skirt, the top of the side seam of the skirt, and this seam of the pocket. Alright, so I'm trimming my thread. And then I will move to the other edge, where I'm going to sew at half an inch all the way to this point over here, which is the junction of the side seam, and then I'll go down half an inch away from the edge. So I'll start from the top, aligning my seam allowance with seam allowance edge with the half inch seam guide, back stitch, and then I'll keep stitching until I get to this corner. I'm removing my pins as I go, aligning my edges, and I'm sewing, manipulating my fabric in the curved area, so that I stay touching the half inch line on my seam guide. Okay. Let's switch my pin over here. and I will sew up to 1/2 inch away from the first seam that I've sewn, the junction seam. I'm hand cranking, and then I'll check how far I am. I need maybe 1 or more stitches, and I'm pivoting to see, okay, I'm good now. So I can take 1, 2, 3 stitches, back 2, 3 stitches to reinforce the corner, and then I'll remove my pin and I will finish my seam at 1/2 inch and back stitch again. Okay, so according to my pins, this is the right side of the garment, and this is like the sewing side is the wrong side of the garment. As you can see, now I already created my pocket. The pocket goes towards the front, so it needs to be attached to the front waist. This piece over here is the front. How do I know? The front waist is actually, yeah, the front waist is higher than the back waist. So the if you see that the waist is lower, that's the back, okay? And the front needs to so the 2 pocket bags needs to be attached to the front piece. From the side, I'm done. Basically, my pocket is kind of staying between the 2 layers, okay? And what I need to do again is I need to attach the pocket bag at the waist seam. So this will be the waist seam of the skirt. In this case, I need to fix the upper seam either by machine basting or hand basting. I will align these 2 edges together, okay, and I'll use stitch length number 5, which is the machine basting stitch length, and I will sew within the seam allowance. So this means I need to sew only at 1/4 inch so that it doesn't show on the outside of the garment. So I'm going to, and this is a basting stitch, so I don't need to back stitch, and I'm aligning the edge with the outside edge of the foot, and that will hold my pocket in place with the front skirt, right? Oh. There's some stitching issues in here, but yeah, from the outside it will be attached within the seam allowance. So actually, if I'm attaching a waistband, the waistband will be stitched at 1/2 inch, so it will cover this holding stitch, okay? And at the same time, the seam allowance, I can also snip the seam allowance diagonally up to the corner, 1 layer only. So my scissors are going between the 2 layers, and I am only snipping the back seam allowance so that I can open the seam allowance and press it, and I'll do the same thing over here. And when you cut on a diagonal, it's on bias, so it won't fray, right? So now I can open the seam allowance and take it to the ironing board and press it open, okay? So I'll take it to the ironing board and press the seam open. So again, I brought it to the ironing board and I pressed the seam open on the top and bottom of this seam. You can use the hand to help you achieve that. And then, as you can see, on the outside of the garment, you have a crisp seam, and doesn't show like that there is a pocket in there, but once you slip your hand in, there is your pocket, nice and attached. And this is how it looks on the inside. And that concludes the inseam pocket exercise. So here are the 3 pattern pieces, and here is the end result. Okay. All right. So the inseam pocket exercise sample book number 3.